Hello everyone, my name is Christian Eschbach, and welcome to another one of my album reviews. I want you to repeat after me, Master of Puppets. So, Master of Puppets. There are a few albums I would definitely say are undisputable 10s. Whether I like them or not, whether they're an album that I go out of my way to thoroughly listen to or not, there are definitely some undisputable 10s out there. Alice Cooper's Killer, as far as I'm concerned, undisputable 10. That album is perfect from beginning to end. Aerosmith's Toys in the Attic, same thing. Beginning to end. Perfect album. Led Zeppelin 4. Not my favorite Zeppelin album. I have actually talked about that album, and, you know, definitely not my favorite Zeppelin album. But undisputably, it's pretty much a perfect album from beginning to end, and that pretty much is just because I'm saying that. Black Sabbath Paranoid. Perfect album, beginning to end. Black Sabbath arguably has a couple of them. Led Zeppelin arguably has a couple of them. Alice arguably has a couple of them. Aerosmith, yeah, they got one. Frank Zappa's definitely got a couple that I would classify as perfect albums as well. And not that I'm giving away, I mean, like, these are literally like albums that you listen from beginning to end, and they are just brilliant the whole way through. This album is the exact same. This is not my favorite album. This is not the Metallica album I listen to the most often. But undisputably, this album is a perfect 10 from one end to the other. And I'm going to rush through this album as I talk about it because it is such a perfect album. You know, like, I could sing the whole thing. I can make noises. I can do my music impressions and whatnot. But chances are, if you were watching this, you've already heard this album. You know, you're not going to hear anything you haven't heard before on here, right? This is just... Metallica could play this album live. If Metallica, you know, I'm going to see them in November for their 2 nights. They could play this whole album live in one of the 2 nights, and no one is going to complain, because there is no bad song on here, okay? The worst song on this album, as far as I'm concerned, me personally, the worst song on this album is Sanitarium, which I'll get into as we get to. Alright, Battery. First off, you got that great little instrumental opening. Oh, sounds so sweet. Cherry. And then it just goes and launches you into a heavy tirade of metal and lets you know exactly what you were in for, man. Like, they come out swinging so hard and heavy on this particular song, man, that it is just brutal. It is metal. Then we launch into the album's title track, Master of Puppets. A song that, okay, has been brought back to life and made super popular by Stranger Things. So, cool to Stranger Things for that. That is by far, that scene there, man, every metalhead I know, ever, that is like the scene, man. That is the scene for all of us, just to get up there. Now, me personally, it wouldn't have been with a guitar and amps. I would have had the monster drum set around me, encapsulating me Neil Peart style, but that's just me. Speaking of Neil Peart, what a lot of people don't know is when Metallica was going into the studio to do this album, Geddy Lee was actually originally approached to do the production on this album. Imagine how this album could have sounded if Geddy Lee had done the production on it. Geddy Lee does not regret turning it down. He definitely thinks he would not have done it the same justice. I've read it. Anyways, and that is from Geddy Lee, not from Metallica. Okay, so moving back on. Master of Puppets, fantastic. Everybody should know this one. This one's just like a huge monster song, especially considering it was never a radio hit. It was never a single. You know, when this album came out in '85, Metallica was still like the hugest underground band of all time at that point. You know, they got to go tour opening for Ozzy. You know, people were going to see them instead of Ozzy even in cases. But, whew. After that, we get into the thing that should not be. What you don't realize is technically the thing that should not be is actually kind of a follow-up to Call of Cthulhu. They're all in the Cthulhu mythos, however you want to say it. That being connected to H.P. Lovecraft and the legendary Cthulhu. So the thing that should not be, man, that's all about. That is a great thing. A song that should have a music video, man, for just a giant Cthulhu rising, man. Be beautiful. Amazing. Anyways, moving on. Then we get to Welcome Home Sanitarium. Now, to me, this is the weakest song on this album. Well, that says something about this album, right, man? And the reason why Welcome Home Sanitarium for me is the weakest song on this album is, growing up being an Alice Cooper fan, I'm used to having crazy. Lots of songs about crazy, stuff like that. This song doesn't hit a lot of the crazy inflections I would want it to. This is more someone who is horribly clinically depressed thrown into a sanitarium, as opposed to someone who is actually crazy being put in a sanitarium. Two totally different perspectives, and I don't need to be depressed. That's kind of how I look at it. It's the same idea I have with Fade to Black. Not that Fade to Black is a bad song, not that Welcome Home Sanitarium is a bad song. It's just a matter of they're just really damn depressing, you know? If I want to be that depressed, I'll put on the And Justice for All album and go take care of myself. Oh. All right. Dark humor, all jokes aside. Moving on from there, we hit Disposable Heroes. Ooh, I love Disposable Heroes. Disposable Heroes is this absolutely fantastic, brutal song about war, basically. Now, there really wasn't war per se. This is the one thing that really kind of sucks about metal going into the 80s, the 90s. It changed again. It changes when you get into the 2000s in a post 9/11 world. It changes perspective. But through the 80s and the 90s, no matter what they say about the Cold War and all that other BS, the 80s and 90s were pretty mellow and pretty chill, man. You know, like, peace was a thing. You know, you could say, especially when you get into the 90s, yes, there was some war, and you get over to Europe and there was the different separations and stuff like that. Yes, there was definitely war. But the idea of war, you know, as someone in North America anyways, not the same anymore until after, like I said, 9/11. And Disposable Heroes, definitely in a 9/11 world, post 9/11 world, this song means so much more. When you look at how everything was handled at the very end, basically a 20-year war for what? For what? Did anything really change? I mean, puppets, that's it. All right. After Disposable Heroes, we get into Leper Messiah. Leper Messiah, man. That song, ooh, that is something. When it comes to this album, Leper Messiah and The Thing That Should Not Be probably tied for which one's my actual favorite song on this one. I love The Thing That Should Not Be because of how dark and heavy and metal it is. Dark and heavy, though, focusing on the heavy. And then you get to Leper Messiah, and Leper Messiah, you definitely get more into the metal, you know. I just absolutely, cherry. Now, when I talk about those two songs, whenever anybody talks about Metallica albums, especially Metallica fans, the rule is you never talk about the instrumental pieces. The instrumental pieces are always kept separate from the rest of the album. And the reason why is the instrumental pieces are really, ooh, the cherries, man. The absolute cherries. Metallica fans, you ask them to put a top 5 together. They say, okay, can I have 2 top 5s, top 5 instrumentals and then top 5 regular songs? Because the instrumentals mean that much. And Orion. Oh, I've already mentioned Call of Cthulhu. That was a brilliant solo. Or instrumental. Orion? Damn! Okay, so, when Metallica released Through the Never, I went and saw it in the theaters. Fantastic movie. Do not regret going to see it in theaters. It was fantastic on the big screen. I would go do it again in a heartbeat. It really is kind of crappy that it didn't get a better run than it did, and that really sucks. I really would have liked to have seen Through the Never do much better than it did. But one of the parts that I love the most about Through the Never, honestly, was the end credits when it's got the band by themselves on the light up stage, jamming out Orion, playing it in full from beginning to end. I absolutely loved it, and I was so thrilled that they decided to redo it. Orion is one of those songs that you put together a Metallica top 5. Like, as much as I say that I love The Thing That Should Not Be and Leper Messiah, if I have to put together a Metallica top 5, Orion's going in that top 5 before those 2 songs, even though I would consider those more favorites than Orion, because I will listen to Orion over and over and over again, man. Like, that song is just absolutely spectacular. And the best part about it being an instrumental is, not really going to offend anybody. And I also like Orion because in the grand scheme of Metallica, they don't do, thankfully, in some cases, they don't do a lot of, we'll call them D&D kind of like songs. Cthulhu is where I'm kind of going at. You got Phantom Lord, you got Cthulhu, Thing That Should Not Be. Orion, I kind of, in the Cthulhu mythos that is Metallica, I almost want to put Orion in there as well, because it really feels like it's part of the the spatial part of that storyline. If you are familiar with H.P. Lovecraft and his works with them, the stars and the monsters being on the stairs, the great elder gods, stuff like that, all part of that. Sure, they call it Orion, which is based off of what we call it, but to me, it kind of all works in there together. And then the album finishes on Damage Incorporated. Super fast, super heavy. Basically, the brilliance is you come in on Battery, which is just insanely fast, insanely heavy, and you go out on Damage Incorporated, which is insanely fast and insanely heavy. Now, if I were to tweak this album in any way whatsoever, I might switch where Damage Incorporated and Disposable Heroes are. Only change I'd make to this entire album. That's it. And the only reason why I might switch those two is I think Disposable Heroes might be a slightly higher note to go out on than Damage Incorporated. But that's it. And that's really, like, that's stretching to try and find something I would tweak with this album, okay? That's really stretching. There is nothing wrong with this album. There is nothing to tweak with this album. This is honestly, by far, without a doubt, one of the most perfect albums I have ever talked about. I honestly hope that maybe they do play this whole album live. Would that not be brilliant? That'd be absolutely brilliant, Realistically, the very first night, when I see them, these 3 albums live? Maybe. Pretty please? Pretty please, just these 3 albums? The second night could be picking shoes out of the other albums. But the first night, just those 3? Oh my God, could you imagine? Oh! God, that would be the most amazing night ever. You know, obviously there's certain tracks they'd have to leave out, you know. I love Trujillo. I don't want to hear him do a rendition of Anesthesia Pulling Teeth. If they wanted to play a video version from, like, you know, S&M 2, that'd be cool. But I don't want to see Rob do it. And then, you know, on Ride the Lightning, if they really wanted to leave out either Trapped Under Ice or Escape, or both, I wouldn't be horribly heartbroken. It would be okay. As long as the rest of the album's played, right? And then Master of Puppets, they got to play the whole album, beginning to end, straight through. Okay, that's it, folks. I'm done talking about Master of Puppets. This will be it for me talking about Metallica, probably for a little bit. I've covered quite a bit. I just have to get through the rest of the catalog between now and November, and I really don't have a lot of the catalog left to get through, so that shouldn't take too long. Anyways, folks, thank you very much for watching. Leave me your comments. Let me know what you think while you're on your way down there. Feel free to stop by. You'll see a little link. There's my Patreon. Feel free to go that way. You can throw me some money. Hit the like button, the subscribe button, the little bell for notifications. Peace, love, take care.